The Square Ball Podcast.
Welcome to the latest edition of The West Stand. This is our new show that bookends the week. It's out normally on a Monday and a Friday. Guests from across the world of Leeds United, featuring journalists, commentators, ex-players, plenty more. Dan Moylan with Michael Normanton. And today's guest is Beren Cross from Leeds Live. You can find Leeds Live online on the internet.
Absolutely, yeah, like everything else in the world.
And you are on Twitter, X, whatever you want to brand it as
whatever
now.
you want to call it, yeah, just my name, Beren Cross. Thankfully, there's not many other people called Beren Cross, so I wanted to fight for that tag.
So we are a few days on from the Friday night happenings at Sunderland. You were in that stadium. How do you feel about it now, sort of 3 days on? What was the reaction like in the stadium for a start?
Towards the end of football matches, written journalists especially, it's very, very frantic because you're trying to get things ready for full time. And so at that point, of course, Leeds were on their way to a very, very impressive 2-1 win, given the week they've had, the amount of travelling, the injuries, falling behind early, of course, at the Stadium of Light. And you sort of looked up and you saw the ball bouncing in and you thought, oh, the referee's going to blow here. I mean, there's clearly something's gone wrong because everybody just stopped and is looking quite dumbfounded. And Meslier is pointing in, towards the goal and then towards the penalty area and thinking, no, that's...
Why is everybody cheering?
Yeah, I mean, they've gone ballistic. What's going on here? I mean, and then, of course, it starts to dawn on you what's happened. And you looked up and, the ball just goes around him. And, of course, anybody that hasn't been in the press box that's saying, like, you are right in the gods. You're at the back of the biggest stand and you almost need binoculars. And there was no replays. So we're there trying to sort of document this for the very few people who aren't watching on X, trying to explain what's happened. And we're obviously just saying the ball has gone in. It's gone through Meslier somehow. We don't know how. Of course, he's blaming the turf. And just completely dumbfounded. And I know Meslier's stock has already sort of been plummeting in recent years, including the Premier League years where he conceded so many goals. So it's the last thing he needed, but very, very easy player to pick on, isn't he? When he makes errors like that, when it's so hard to accept.
It's always pointed out, isn't it, that the goalkeeper makes an error and it's normally game-changing, whereas if a striker misses a chance, it's not the be-all and end-all. Strikers can miss chances that do cost you games, but it's never got the same jeopardy attached to it that a goalkeeper's error does. And it was fairly catastrophic. I have seen people saying on Twitter that somebody who was directly in line with it, behind it, that it did take an awful bounce off to the side. Because
really?
I think everybody just kind of is looking at that and going, just how's that happened? Because unless you are like in line with it, it's really, really hard to judge because the camera angles haven't done any great favours, I don't think, in terms of explaining what it was that happened. But what a moment. Like, we were just on the match ball going, it's not fair. Like Rob was sat here saying, I might even write the match report as if we've won. Yeah. Just pretend it didn't happen.
I had a similar feeling watching it. You kind of go, well, that should probably be disallowed because I mean, that's
just not allowed. It's just not right.
That's just not right. It's clearly not fair what's going on there. So I feel like someone should probably step in at this point and go, no, that's not going to count because he wasn't ready or something. It's one of those
That's
ones.
the way it felt, the injustice of it. I mean, like you say, there's been I've not seen a replay yet that actually shows the vicious bounce that Pascal and Illan have said it's taken. But the replay I did see, I thought, have you seen it where he sort of backs off it? The ball's coming in. There's no strikers around him. And with second thoughts, I think, go forward and catch it. Don't let it bounce. I mean, that's the way it felt looking back with hindsight. He backs off it.
Yeah, I mean, I've played in nets, albeit at a terribly, terribly low level, but the skill set is still the same, isn't it? And my instinct watching that was I kind of implored him rather than expecting him to do it, because ultimately you're a goalkeeper. You see balls bounce in front of you all the time. He must have felt a degree of comfort in just going, do you know what? That bounces, I catch it. A split-second instinctive decision. But I know from like coaching and stuff, like being coached, that you are supposed to try and dive on stuff and smother it using your body. But I guess it's just that bloody Leeds United thing, isn't it? Of that once in a lifetime, once in a generation error. And it seems to happen to us at a really, really crucial moment. It didn't happen in the first minute of the game. It didn't happen midway through a game and it was inconsequential. It cost us the victory in the end.
I mean, you think back to the last game where he made a really brilliant save against Coventry, but with 3 up, it's the last minute. Yeah. If that goes in, absolutely no one cares. Whereas just so happens the mistake comes when we're on the verge of what would have been a real statement victory.
Absolutely. I mean, even that first one, Michael, when he saves just before Rigg scores, I mean, that's a really good save that we've, of course, forgotten about because they immediately scored. So he can't catch a break, can he, at the moment, Illan?
He can't. But equally, I'm not going to say it didn't come as a surprise, but it's not entirely surprising because, as you say, he feels like he's not been having the rub of the green recently. Even though he's made some really, really crucial saves, he's also made errors. He's letting quite a lot of shots in close to him and his body. And I don't know, there just seems to be that, and I don't know if it's backed up by the stats or what, but there's just a little bit of a mild discontent about him as a keeper. He's evidently fine, I think, at this level, because he got a huge amount of clean sheets last year. And it's like you say, it's the errors or the goals conceded that you tend to remember rather than the good bits, just such as, it's just human nature, isn't it, where football's concerned. But I don't know, he's fine for this level, but I don't know, did that possibly seal his fate to a certain extent, which sounds dramatic, but I don't mean it to. Like, come the summer, if we don't go up, I think they'll sell him anyway.
Yeah.
If we do go up, would they look to replace him? Is something like that going to weigh quite heavily on him when it comes to the judgment of where he sits with us going forward?
Did Angus Kinnear suggest we turn down offers of around £10 million for him this summer when he came in?
Yeah.
He kind of clubbed in Pascal Illan, didn't he? In that answer, he said we've turned down several 8-figure bids for players like Pascal Illan, etc., etc.
Yeah,
because I think pretty much everyone would have taken that for Meslier. I just don't feel like that he's got his stock is nowhere near where it was a few years ago. I think when you see a young keeper coming in, and occasionally things like this happen, you think, okay, well that's the sort of thing a keeper does when he's played 15 games. 20 games, 30 games. He's getting on for 200 games now, and it becomes less forgivable at this stage. While he is still young for a goalkeeper, he has a huge amount of experience, and I don't think it's okay that things like this happen now and then, but it's adding to the feeling that maybe he's not actually helping us.
Well, I suppose one way to consider it, Beren, is if he was to leave tomorrow, and obviously he can't, but if he was to leave tomorrow, how would you feel about it? Or if he was to leave at the end of the season, how would you feel about it? And it's an open question. Everybody will have a different opinion about it. Personally, I don't feel like, by and large, there'd be a lot of people who would go, that's a massive shame. Which is a shame, actually, because he's been part of something.
Yeah, exactly. He's been here so long now. I mean, he was a part of the promotion winning team, and he and Patrick, even more than Pascal, have played a lot of games for the club and are sort of the legacy players of Marcelo's time. So it would be sad if he left in those circumstances. But to answer your question, I wouldn't be particularly bothered. I think he is superior to Darlow. But I think in terms of getting out the Championship, I think Darlow is serviceable. In your example, if, for instance, Illan left tomorrow, I don't think it would be a huge blow. And especially if they got promoted, I don't think anybody would be particularly upset if Illan was moved on. And I wonder if we are at that tipping point now where too many of these things are happening. Even if it is a vicious bounce and there's nothing he could have done about it, it does feel like there are just too many of these things that are adding up. And like you say, his credit just isn't in the bank there anymore.
I think you go back to the first game where it's basically the first shot he has to face this season. And it pretty much goes straight at him and goes through him against Portsmouth. And maybe straight away then you start the season thinking, oh, God, more of this. Even though it's not... I can see how it's difficult sometimes to save a shot that is close to you, because as a keeper, you're used to trying to adjust your body to use your hands all the time, obviously. And if it's very tight in the same way as players get nutmegged because it's almost too close to them. I can see the difficulty in it, but it goes from that. And we've actually not conceded many goals this year. And a couple of them have been penalties. But again, you look at both penalties and they're actually in more or less the centre of the goal on both occasions. And it's just, even though you never expect the keeper to save penalties, over time you sort of expect them to save some.
Yeah.
Mm.
And he just doesn't feel like he's going to.
Are we being unfair to him, though?
Probably, yes.
Are we being unfair to him? And the other part of this, because I'm sure there'll be people listening or watching who will say, yeah, but he's done loads of good stuff. He has done loads and loads of good saves, which I'm sure he has. But what are we measuring him against there? If you feel like that, what's the standard to which we hold him? Is it too high?
The part of the problem is the standard to which we hold him are his better moments, which are occasionally ridiculously good. Like, he can pull off some brilliant saves, but then he's also got it in him to do weird stuff.
I don't think we're expecting too much of him. I just think over a long period of time now, his distribution continues to frustrate. Graham and I joke about when we do our player ratings, we're constantly saying, made one or two good saves because Leeds don't allow too many shots, but his distribution still a bit iffy, still some question marks around it. So I think over a long period of time now, that credit he had in the bank has dwindled since they finished 9th in the Prem. And I think he got a lot of clean sheets last year, but I think a lot of us put that down to the defence, really, rather than Illan. I remember Leicester away, incredible save in a Leicester away game. But there weren't, Norwich in the playoffs. Remember when Sargent was in 1-on-1 in the playoff semi when Leeds were 1-0, but that was a huge save. But there aren't too many other moments. And I don't think it is a too high a standard. I think it's just an accumulation of maybe smaller things and some major things now.
Could it be, and here's an alternative theory, that because he doesn't have much to do, it's maybe affecting his concentration? He's not that involved in the game, save for being, at the back distributing the passes, that because he's not facing an onslaught of shots, that it's allowing his mind to waver a little bit, or maybe it's just he's not quite as switched on as he needs to be in some of these moments. I don't know. I'm just trying to find a reason that's not just sort of questioning his quality, I suppose.
We've put that to Varka before, when they have dominated games, and we've asked, is it a problem that you are almost too dominant and he's got so little to do and he needs to wake up? And Varka's not really put too much stock in that in the past. I think he even made the point that with that save you mentioned against Coventry from Thomas Asante, that was a game where they dominated and he had to be alert until the 93rd minute to stop that. So I think there might be something in it, but I don't know. I think there's too many of these issues over a long period of time now where there's more to it than that.
Because people will also be listening, watching this and going, well, who would you have instead then?
Yeah.
Which, this is where we get to chicken out of the conversation, I suppose, isn't it?
Someone else.
Right.
Go find someone. Is the thing. I mean, there is and I think there is validity in saying that. It's not the job of fans to name a person and say to get them. The club have a vast scouting department, and there must be someone, I think, is the argument on these things.
To play devil's advocate with it, though, as football fans, as we've discussed loads across this season and across years, the other is always the solution to whatever the problem is.
Absolutely.
You always go, it's the guy on the bench, it's Eddie Nketiah, it's not Eddie Nketiah, it's Patrick Bamford, it's not Patrick Bamford, or it is again.
Yeah.
All those things tend to be true on this cycle year after year after year.
I mean, it was the cycle last year until we got to see Darlow, and then people went, oh, okay. Maybe not Darlow, because everyone went, oh, well, he's done it before in this league. He probably is just going to be more consistent. Maybe he won't make the big saves that Meslier does, but across the season, he'd probably even out. But then we actually saw bits of him and we went, oh, okay. Yeah, put Meslier back in.
I mean, the other side to this is there's not a right lot we can do about it. We're just chatting about it.
I will say,
he is number one and will be so.
Yeah.
I don't think we're quite at the tipping point. It does reach the stage with keepers where they have to be dropped. Like when Rahubka did the Blackpool thing on the back of multiple terrible performances, he just couldn't play again. Wiedwald, he got reached the stage where he couldn't play anymore. Casilla, when he was just getting beaten at his near post, and it felt like he was essentially giving the other team a goal start every game. It does reach a point where keepers have to be dropped. Meslier is nowhere near that yet, I wouldn't say. Yeah. But equally, I think it's an error that is bad enough that you potentially could be dropped for it, because you can see why people would be angry about it. I
completely agree. Before I came in, I knew you'd talk about Meslier, and I was thinking, where are we at with him? And I think we're nowhere near dropping at the moment. I think you remember the Premier League season when Allardyce came in. I don't think any of us were too surprised that he dropped Meslier and brought Robles in, because at that point they were shipping 3, 4, 5 every game. So we're not at that point yet. I think the point you make about the previous goalkeeper is absolutely valid as well. It does get to a point where they are just shot to pieces. But, I mean, Farke made the point post-match at Sunderland where they've been very, very unlucky with the goals they've conceded. I know that's easy for most managers, hard done by managers to say, but you look at Solomon's slip, Pompey was a freak game, Rodon's error with the penalty at Norwich, and then on Friday night, a complete freak incident inside the box. So Farke would point to small little explanations for a lot of these, but we're not at the point of dropping him yet. I think he will stay in the team. And Farke in August said, he told us in the press, he's the best keeper in the league. So if Farke suddenly changes his mind on that, then he almost looks a bit weaker. Yeah,
that's a good point. I hadn't factored that into it. And I think, to get it all in proportion, because there were people saying, why are you still talking about this? It's days later. Because that's started on Twitter already. Get over it, move on. It's like, but, we won't have a show without talking about
massive talking point. Yeah.
What's happened with Leeds United. So,
and truthfully, I am still thinking about it.
Are you?
I am a bit, yeah.
I did on Friday night. I just kept thinking. I had a loop going around in my head. How's that happened? How's that happened? How's that happened?
It was not obviously to the same degree, but in the same way as a bit as you went back to that Derby game, and there was just almost a struggle in your own mind to actually understand what was going on there, because you kind of go, but it was won. It was all finished, and then we've not won.
We were loading up the gloating tweets.
Massive win, wasn't it, going into the international break? Would have been huge.
Yeah, it would have been huge. I mean, in terms of the general state of play, then moving on from talking about Illan Meslier,
can we talk about a bit more, please?
I think it's probably important. And we were about like the wider context. Things are fine.
Oh, really? Yeah, and they're in a really good place, I think. Yes, the win on Friday would have really put a nice little bow on it, with them they would have been joint top before Saturday's games, only behind Sunderland on goal difference. So, yeah, I mean, I talked about the goals they've conceded there. They're really not that many. And they have just had a really, really horrible week. Those 2 long away trips, 2 pretty competent teams in Norwich and Sunderland, 2 devastating injuries to Ilya and Heath. I mean, how's your luck? You haven't picked 2 players in the same position who have had an immense availability record since the start of last season, and they both go out with serious knee injuries, and you're left with Rothwell and Tanaka, who, as Farke described on Friday, are more like number 10s playing as number 6s. I mean, it was a really, really tough week. So to come out with 5 points from those 9, I mean, I think that was a good week for me.
In terms of that, actually, that's an interesting thread to pull on. The style of play he's mentioned, having to adapt his style of play. It's possibly something that fans have been wanting a little bit, letting the handbrake off a little bit, being a bit more progressive, a bit more forward thinking, maybe not trying to stick 2 men in front of the defence or 2 men who are naturally inclined to sit deep, as Ampadu definitely is, because he tends to drop in and almost make a back 3 at times, doesn't he, or a back 5, as the fullbacks push on. But even Gruev feels like he sits deeper, to the extent where actually you observed on some of the match balls, I think, Michael, where you've said, wow, Gruev was further up. He's actually taking shots now. So that sort of suggests where the land has laid before that.
Yeah, I think they looked really good as a pair as well, I have to say. For people who've not trained together, not played together for very long at all, it actually looked like it worked. And
Tanaka doesn't really need to, given the talent that he's obviously got in his locker.
This is true. But it's nice to have lost 2 very, very good midfielders and have 2 more very good midfielders. It does actually show to a degree that we're the luxury we're living in the Championship here, because I don't think probably any other team in the league can lose 2 first-choice midfielders and end up with these 2 in there. I know the worry now is what happens if one of those gets injured, and then you really are into like picking over the youth team and stuff, trying to squeeze someone in there. But as a 4 to have as a central midfield option, it's pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Farke said on Friday, bringing in 2 of, in his opinion, the 2 best passing midfielders in the division. You can have an argument if you want on that, but that's the point that he agrees with you, Michael. And I think people look to the window and will say, well, should they have done more to get better cover? It's like, well, who's going to come in and be the 5th choice centre mid and be ready for this particular freak situation? So I don't think there can be too many fingers pointed at the recruitment in central midfield. It shows how important it was to get Tanaka in, because we were pushing for Tanaka until the end of the window, and imagine if they hadn't done. So it's painful that Verba's also injured. Because if he was fit, then there's this possibility you can maybe even put Pascal in the middle if you had to. Yes, it's ruining the central defence, and we don't want to mess with that too much. But Marcelo, of course, played him there, and if you're desperate, Pascal could do a job there if you needed a deeper line midfielder.
Yeah. No, it's a good shout actually.
Ampadu being out is almost more of a stress for the centre of defence, because Rodon picked up another booking, and he's not a million miles now away from getting his 5 yellows. I think that was his 4th for the season.
Yeah, there's a few of them, I think, close now.
So then you're thinking, well, if he's out, then would have been Ampadu, would have been Verba.
Yeah.
Probably would be Sam Byram now, I guess, at a push. If we need to fill someone into centre back, but it's not ideal.
He's tucked in on the right hand side of a 3 before, hasn't he, as Byram?
Yeah, and he's obviously fairly tall, so I can see how it would work. But you're into him or De Bayo or a complete restructure somehow. But that's not ideal.
I think, Byram is probably the way I think he would go. He's mentioned Byram in the past can do a job there when they've been on the bare bones. I think he talks to Bayo up publicly, I think, just to keep his confidence up if the time does come. But I think you're right. I think he would always look to go for Byram maybe in the first instance. But it's going to be interesting, isn't it, to see how he does want to change it. Because in theory, if Rothwell and Tanaka are going to be a bit less reliable in terms of sitting there and protecting the backline, does that then mean that Junior and Bogle have got to be a little bit deeper? I mean, it's going to be, he said on Friday, he's got to earn his money, Farke. He knows this is his job and he's got to solve it. And there's going to be no complaints next May if he allows this to become a bigger problem for them.
I mean, there's no telling Junior Firpo where he should stand, is there? Not really. Not that free spirit.
He was furious though, wasn't he?
He was furious, but then again, I suppose his emotions, there was nothing in that, was there? I mean, people react differently all the time to annoying situations. I can't say I took it particularly well at the time either.
No. I think, Junior was pretty similar to a lot of the fans, really. Absolutely furious with what had happened.
But having got on the end of that 1-2 with Willie Nonto was pretty good. And I want to actually give praise to Nonto, because I don't think I fully appreciated his involvement on the night, just around all the drama of Meslier and the late equaliser. But there's the highlights were doing the rounds of his input on Twitter, and I watched the highlights videos. Like, he was everywhere. He's our best player now. Yeah.
I think with Somerville and Georgie out the way, I think there's no competition this year as far as I'm concerned. He's the most influential person we have.
He's becoming the talisman, isn't he? I think he obviously had a very, very difficult start to last season, self-inflicted, and he's come out of the shadow of Georgie and Crescencio now, and is really stepping up. And if he can just stay fit, that's his role to have, isn't it? He's going to provide the goals and assists that hopefully keep Leeds up there.
Has he got an international duty?
Yes, Italy under 21s. Yeah.
That's good news.
Great. So I was thinking about Georgie then. Sorry, I got still clinging on to
He's
that
doing
dream.
nothing.
No,
He's doing nothing.
Did nothing on Sunday, didn't he? God, that was honestly, it was like a dagger through my broken heart watching him score for bloody Brighton and then assist another one.
The assist was in some ways better than the goal.
Yeah.
Anyway, don't matter. Move on.
He took it really well. I was going to say he's learned how to finish, but he didn't really. He still scuffed the shot into the far post. So, yeah, who's the real winners? I think it's us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Stuck down here in the Championship.
Do you not like our new number 10?
I loved
Who's now a number 9?
His contribution from the bench, yes.
he did well, I thought, the other day, and he took that header very nicely.
Really nice goal, wasn't it?
Did you expect to see him start at Sunderland?
I don't think I expected it. I think that we obviously knew about Rothwell coming in, and I wondered if maybe Byron might come in for one of the fullbacks if they were a bit fatigued or whatever. But it wasn't a huge surprise, to be honest. I think, Matteo is young, first season as a starter, 3 games in 6 days is going to be pretty knackering, and Pirro he can't do much more from the bench. So not a huge surprise, but yeah, small one.
He's in form. He's scoring every hour or so, every 60 odd minutes, isn't he? I saw that stat doing the rounds.
And definitely onside.
Well,
it was very close.
It was fun, seeing the Sunderland fans calling for VAR in the Championship, which would have obviously penalised them to the tune of a penalty.
09, yeah.
In the home game.
Probably would have got Leeds promoted.
Yeah, come to think of it. So, picky battles and all that. But as we were saying on the match ball, I don't know if you caught it. You've not watched it, have you yet, Michael?
I can't.
You refused. It's beneath you. We're saying actually,
I just don't want to hear about that game just yet.
As frustrating as it would be to be on the receiving end of that, hand on heart, I would rather have us concede that goal than have VAR.
Oh yeah,
I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just don't want it.
Yeah,
at all. We've done it. We've done it to death, haven't we? As a discussion point. But yeah, I'd rather have mistakes at the time rather than mistakes made by VAR, because that also happens every single week.
And next season, Beren, that'll be onside.
Absolutely, yeah, of course it will.
So let's count it now.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lovely cross from Nonto and a great finish, and the sort of that's exactly why he was in the team, wasn't it, Perro, to finish chances like that in the 6-yard box.
It felt like a very basic goal for us. Did that? There was no. I'm used to us having a crowded box and trying to pass it through. This was just whip it in.
Yeah, it's a good point. That
whip it in and let a striker head it.
Not a break from tradition, but a break from what we normally do. I do wonder if sometimes we do overcomplicate it, particularly at this level, because we've said before, sometimes just chuck the ball in behind the centre halves, get them turning and running back towards their own goals.
I mean, it's possibly just because Sunderland were at home and are expected to attack and win the game, that there was maybe a bit more space for us to do this sort of thing. Whereas,
fair enough.
I guess we tend to be used to teams sitting very deep on us, don't we? But yeah, it was quite refreshing to just score a basic 90s goal.
Is that where your head's at? I just want to live in the 90s forever.
It's just Brian Dean headed it into the net. Fine. Easy.
Yeah, good goal, well taken. He's in form. And we've got wide men coming back potentially then after the break as well, in the form of Solomon and James, which will add more to the recipe as well, because if the defence and the defensive midfield is stretched to its limit, I suppose the wings have been as well.
Yeah. Well, if we're looking at new formations, let's just cut out anybody that plays in central positions and just play loads of fullbacks and wingers. Just go down the flanks.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to have left.
Yeah, the anti-Marsh, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, it'd be good to get them back. I think we've missed Dan James, because, talking about trying to exploit things at this level, Dan James just running with the ball,
really good player, yeah.
past,
really good player.
Past defenders, it's underrated, I think.
I mean, that is going to be an embarrassment of riches having those four, because I think Ramazani and Nonto, as you've said, have done really well in their absence over the past week or so. So to have James and Solomon, I mean, you are looking at arguably the 4 best wingers in the league in the same squad. So it's going to be another issue for Farke to kind of manage their minutes. Of course, he's not going to put Solomon and James straight in, is he? He's going to try and manage them carefully. But yeah, if we have to go back to just basically outscoring opponents, then I mean that's not bad if you've got players like that to start and come off the bench.
Interesting that we've got Sheffield United after the break, which we will look forward to that closer to the time. But they've only conceded 3 goals, so I think we're going to need all our attacking wits about us, and probably
6 clean sheets on the bounce.
We're going to probably need to be clinical going forward, I think, to make the most out of that game. But that said, we've only conceded 7 goals, and as we were talking about,
none of them count
earlier in the show. The ones we don't like, we can just discount. Absolutely. Which ones are you ruling out?
2 penalties. The Burnley one because someone slipped.
Yeah. That late one at Sunderland.
Fridays.
Yeah, obviously that one. So that's 4 of them, and
that leaves us on only 3 conceded, which is the same as Sheffield United.
I think the one Meslier let in against the opener against Portsmouth. Portsmouth first.
You're not having that?
No, it went straight at him. Should have saved that.
Okay,
so
we've only conceded 2 goals all season.
Basically, yeah.
Oh,
pretty good, isn't it?
It's a really good record. Yeah. Well done, lads. But we sit 5th at the minute. Beren, happy with that, I think, aren't we, going into this break? Because it's starting to settle down now. Within 3 points at the top, that's the important bit. And I suppose it's just about consistency over the season now.
I think you guys reflected on it in the Coventry match ball, but it just felt like the Coventry win really settled things down. I think the entire league just sort of seemed to sort of find a bit of a rhythm, and Leeds sort of, I think the pain of the window now is starting to sort of ebb away into the background, and the players that are here are starting to find a bit of routine, and we're sort of moving into that new transition, if you like, and they're just going to, touch wood, they're just going to keep ticking over with the wins now and get back to some clean sheets. And yeah, it does feel like in a much calmer, relaxed place, even though points were dropped away last week. But 2 pretty tough away games, those. And
a long stretch of very, very winnable games against teams in the lower half after this Sheffield United game. So it's just that thing, isn't it, of building momentum. Had we beaten Sunderland, you then go into the break just a lot more relaxed. But I came out of that game still pretty relaxed about where we are because we were against the top side of the division. If you can then build on that platform against Sheffield United, you then go into Watford, Bristol, Plymouth, Millwall, QPR, Swansea. There's a lot of, Luton are even struggling. I expected them to be up there this season. They're right down near the bottom.
I'm kind of reassured by the fact it doesn't seem to be a brilliant team in this league.
Yeah.
Because after Sheffield United, we will have played all the top teams. We'll have also played quite a few down the bottom. And I don't think anyone's that good. Like, Burnley got pretty lucky. They were all right in moments against us. West Brom had absolutely no ambition. Sunderland, we were, as we've covered extensively, we were there. We were over the line, and then that happened. So I think we've done pretty well really so far, and I don't think there's certainly not a Leicester in this division.
Absolutely not. Yeah,
unless it's us, and we're going to at some point hit form.
Yeah, there's nobody that scared me. I think Norwich had their moments, Sunderland had their moments, but they had a very, very soft underbelly for quite long passages of those games. And like you say, we'll look at Sheffield United and see what they're about, but nobody scares me. And I think if Leeds can get their act together, it's there to be won if they can.
Yeah, at this point last season, 9 games in, Leicester had 24 points. Heading into the break, so the calendar will shift slightly with the fixtures, but still 9 games played, 8 of them were won. So it's a 5-point difference between the team that's at the top compared to last season. So we're a lot closer. We're a lot more in touch with what's happening at the top. And yeah, a win when we come off this break would be very nice. But I feel quite not confident, but I feel a certain degree of comfort in the performance that we put in on Friday. Yeah,
it was really good. I mean, I could feel Farke's pain because, of course, other than Illan to some degree, nobody's at fault for that goal. So it's very, very hard. I mean, that's why Junior was so angry. That's why the players were in such disbelief because they'd put in such a shift. A lot of tired legs there. Really, really rough week for a lot of reasons, emotionally and physically. And you're going to come away with a really, really impressive 2-1 win that would have, like I say, taken them top of the table. So yeah, I think the pain will subside from that equaliser. But I think a lot of sort of credit to be given to the players for that performance.
Is there a slight argument to say we should have maybe done a little bit more at 2-1? Because while they didn't exactly create many chances, there were some nervous moments when balls were being crossed in, and it felt like we settled back to just hold on to a 2-1, which I know is understandable.
Yeah, I mean, look,
but having looked the better team for large portions of the game, though, you almost think, isn't the easier way to win this just to completely put it out of sight?
Yeah, I mean, we were chatting during the game, and again, we had so much ready to go for the match ball, the notes we've made, the ideas we'd prepped, and one of which was going to be
prepping ideas. Who do you think you are?
One of the ideas, well, all right then, we'd mentioned it in dispatches. We were just saying, like, the game management was excellent.
Yeah.
So I think we're possibly retrofitting the outcome. We're retrofitting what happens to.
He said he left Nonto and Ramazani on so long because he wanted that third goal. I think if he felt if he'd put Schmidt and Byram on early, it would have sent a message to say we're shutting up shop. We're gonna sit in, defend, and try and protect the 2-1. So his explanation was he left them on already very, very tired to try and get that third goal, but obviously it never came. Aronson had a good chance, didn't he, when Schmidt put him in for a third goal, but it was blocked late on.
Yeah, not his best game on Friday, I didn't think.
Sort of flitted in and out of it. I don't think it was too bad.
Just looking ahead to the Sheffield United game then as we close out the show. We're going to be chatting to the lads from Not the Top 20 podcast are coming on. We're going to have a chat with them tomorrow, see what they think about the overall state of the Championship, because we refuse to engage with anything to do with the Championship.
I watch all the teams at least twice a season.
Who's your favourite standout star so far?
in the Championship.
Yep.
Or Connor Shaughnessy.
Really?
Yes.
Why? What's he done that you've...
played for Leeds once.
Right, yeah, great.
So that's why he caught my eye.
There we go. Searing analysis from Normanton again.
Are you excited for the Sheffield United game? I mean, I remember last season, the Leicester home game, I mean, it went feral, didn't it, when Archie and Connor Roberts scored. But are you excited for Ellen Road to maybe... I mean, that's a sort of occasion, a match where Sheffield United are in great form, Friday night, back at Ellen Road. You know it's a big game, which it could be really crackling that night.
Yeah, Yorkshire Derby, bit of an atmosphere under the lights.
Wilder.
Yeah, Wilder. It might feel a little bit, not maybe quite as feral as like the sort of Leicester game.
Too early in the season.
Did, because it's earlier in the season. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think there'll be a little bit of spice to it. I think that's one of the things as well. People have been talking about the atmosphere at Ellen Road this season. It just feels like there's so little jeopardy in the season. I think that it's just taking a little bit of the spice out of a lot of the games. We're expected to win, so we can't. There's almost a sit back and wait for it to happen, which I think is probably, you can compare with what happens over at Man City, just albeit on a lower scale. They're so good that their fans now just sit there in silence, waiting for them to do something amazing because they see it so often. I mean, we're not quite at the same standard, but I think because not far off, but because of there's the same sort of expectation that our fans expect us to win this division or be there or thereabouts, and therefore when teams come and they're not ambitious, we expect our team to turn up and beat them. Whereas I think if a team is more ambitious, it might just give that little bit, like say, a little bit of extra edge to it all. A
good recognisable hate figure on the touchline is always useful as well. It's like when, even though they're not particularly going to be rivals this year, like when Rooney comes, you know what you're doing that day. It's easy. It's easy for everyone. Everyone knows everyone knows the role. Everyone knows exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, and there's obviously a bit of like the Bogle thing as well, because he left to come, and we'll be singing to Gus Hamer as well.
Can we mention Gus Hamer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so there'll be plenty of little bits of narrative, I think, bits of fun to be had. But I was going to say, we'll obviously, we'll have a bit of a break before that. I quite enjoy the breaks. I'm not looking forward to it yet. So when these come around now, as daft as I think it is having 3 international breaks before Christmas, and like, because we've only played 9 games, we've had 2 breaks now. It's annoying because it's very difficult to get any sort of momentum up, I think. And it's no coincidence that I think when you see people going on runs like we did, it was when there was no breaks that we went on that run last season. So down with the breaks. However, I'm enjoying them.
Why?
Well, it's my wedding anniversary at the weekend, so purposefully scheduled it.
Leeds aren't going to make you angry.
For the international break.
Okay.
So Leeds couldn't make me angry around the same weekend, and it means I didn't have to make a choice about which one to attend on the day.
Easy stuff.
Leeds game or wedding?
I went summer wedding for the same reason.
Yeah.
The break's quite well timed for Leeds, don't you? As I think with the injuries and getting players back, and obviously how tough last week was with the travelling. I think it does come at a good time.
You say getting players back, but then there's always the people getting injured on international duty thing that seems to happen every time, where you go, they picked up a knock, they're going to be out for it. We don't think they need an operation. But
but my closing thought before was going to be about Meslier, actually, just to bring it back to Meslier and Sheffield United, that he'll get a good reception against Sheffield United, because as much as people get a bit hand-wringy, we discuss things like this, we pick it apart on podcasts, albeit knowing that nothing's going to change between now and the end of the season. So we crack on. Ellen Road is always really supportive of people who've had a difficult time, up to a point.
I was going to say,
if it carries on happening, then it can turn and people will get annoyed, and there gets to be that kind of nihilistic thing that can hit the air. But for the most part, I think we keep that arm's length for a lot longer than perhaps you might imagine.
Get Alex Cairns on the bench. He knows the role well of watching an unfolding horror show from the sideline.
He might be there, mate, if all these injuries continue to mount up.
True enough.
Double keeper.
Yeah. Can he play centre back?
He's big enough.
There's only one way to find out. He can certainly jump, can't he? But we'll see what happens with all that, and we'll preview the Sheffield United game next week or whenever it comes around. I'm just enjoying all this time off at the minute. Presumably you're the same, Beren. There's nothing to be doing at the minute.
No, it's a nightmare for us because we've got to fill a website most days without any new press conferences to cover or anything like that. So it's tough going. I mean, we hate them, to be honest, in our trade. I mean, we want the matches to keep coming because that's what we feed off. That's sort of best part of the job, really. So we do hate them when they come. But as I say, I think I can understand why at this time it might be good timing for Leeds. And I think by the time they get back for the Sheffield United game, the melee stuff will have moved on and people will want to just have a sort of restart, if you like, and back him. But if he does chuck one in, then we'll see what the reaction is.
You'll find Beren's stuff on Leeds Live. Thanks for coming down again. We'll do it again soon.
Cheers, guys.
See you in a bit.
The Square Ball Podcast.